First of all, before we start this video, I just want to give a shout out to one of my good friends, Kevin Fernandez. He was the one who actually did this sort of thread on Twitter a few years ago. And I asked him kindly if he would allow me to do this in a YouTube video, and he said it was all good. So make sure you follow Kevin. His links will be in the description. He's by far more knowledgeable than I'll ever be on this sport. So make sure you follow him, link in the description. But as it is closer to Christmas, it also means it's close to the January transfer market. And with the season being halfway through already, some people need to improve positions in their squad, get marquee signings, and other people just need to fill out some bench options or the rest of their team. So in this video, I'm going to pick one player from Liga Portugal that your club should sign this January. And to make it fair, so I don't just say Victor Gyökeres for every club will have to have a different player, so I can't use the same player twice. Number 1, Arsenal, Victor Gyökeres.
Wait a minute!
Striker, 70 million to 100 million euros. Now, I look at Arsenal's team, and the one thing I think they lack the most is a goal threat and a goal scorer. I do really like Kai Havertz. I think he's a phenomenal footballer, but in terms of just an out-and-out goal scorer, he's not that, nor is Gabriel Jesus. They've got good players on the wings that can score goals like Bukayo Saka and Martinelli, but I think what they're missing is an out-and-out striker who can go in and score goals, and that is Victor Gyökeres. Of course, we've seen him do it on the big stage. There's no point of, he only does it in the Farmers League. He beat Man City, scored a hat-trick against them as well. He scored goals against Atlanta, Benfica and Porto as well, so he's not just doing it against the quote-unquote smaller teams in the league. Victor Gyökeres can be a very good asset for Arsenal. Not only does he create his own chances, but he's also good from set pieces in the air, so would also help Nicolas Jova and Declan Rice, with their set piece deliveries. Victor Gyökeres would fit right into that. He's also good at link-up play, which is very good in Arteta's system as well. He can help the wingers and the midfielders progress a bit more forward also. And the best thing, in my opinion, is Victor Gyökeres is progressive runs with the ball. He can create his own chances. Literally, all you need is just a through ball up to Victor Gyökeres. We've seen it so many times. He just runs through and scores. He's just that good. And when he's motivated, I think he's one of the best strikers in Europe. However, it's not really done great this season compared to the season before. As of recording, Victor Gyökeres has not scored in the last 5 games. As of recording, they do play Boa Vista tonight, so he might change that. So he's not scored in 5 games from open play. He has scored penalties, but in terms of just being a goal scorer in 90 minutes through open play, Victor Gyökeres has not done that in the last 5 matches. But I think he'll be surrounded by better players in a better system than he is currently, and I think Mikel Arteta can turn Victor Gyökeres into a goal scoring machine. At a price between 70 and 100 million, there is rumours that say he could leave in the summer for 70 million. I don't know if 70 million will entice him to leave now, but his release clause currently stands at 100 million. But the way Sporting are playing under João Pereira, it could mean a lot of players want to leave out and leave ship before it sinks. So maybe Victor Gyökeres does try and force a move to a big club. And like I said, I think you could put Victor Gyökeres for any one of these teams. But when I see a team that is lacking a goal scorer, lacking a goal threat, and not being able to score goals, and that is some of the reason why they're not progressing very well in the league table, that's Arsenal. And I think Victor Gyökeres would be a perfect fit. Aston Villa, Pedro Gonçalves, winger, 40 million, 70 million euros. So Pedro Gonçalves is someone I think fits Aston Villa like a glove. Aston Villa have been scoring a lot of goals recently, with Jean Duran and also Ollie Watkins still being a very good player. But I think Pedro Gonçalves, in terms of versatility, fits in this Aston Villa team very well. He's also been linked to Aston Villa the last sort of 2 or 3 transfer windows, so there definitely is an interest there, and I think Aston Villa should make the move this January. Pedro Gonçalves is mostly a winger, but under Ruben Amorim has also played in the midfield positions as a number 8, so he could also fit into that system for Aston Villa and Unai Emery. And he's a proven goal scorer. He can score from pretty much anywhere, as we saw versus Arsenal, scoring from the halfway line. He has got a very reliable shot from outside the area, and that means he could pretty much score from anywhere in the pitch if given the space and the opportunity. Not only is he a great goal scorer though, he's a great assister, and he's very, very consistent. His numbers over the last 4 seasons for Sporting have pretty much hit every single season at the same sort of level. There's only sort of 1 decline season that he had. And this year, Pedro Gonçalves has dealt with a few injuries and he's been out for the last sort of month. But I do think when he returns back from injury, he'll return back to form. And I think a lot of Sporting's play, not winning so many games under João Pereira is because he doesn't have Pedro Gonçalves at his disposal. Pedro Gonçalves creates so much space in this Sporting team that when he's not there, you really notice it. Marcus Edwards, Conrad Harder and Giovanni Kender are good players in their own right, but none of them are close to what Pedro Gonçalves brings to Sporting. Pedro Gonçalves offers space. He's a great passer. He's a great progressive passer. He's progressive with the ball. And I don't think Sporting have someone like that in their team when he's not in there. He is Sporting's big game player, scoring of course against Arsenal, but scoring against Borussia Dortmund as well. He scored against Benfica as well. Pedro Gonçalves is showing up for the big occasions, and for a team like Aston Villa, who are competing in Europe still and their first Champions League season in a while, it would be good to have someone who is a reliable goal scorer in these big competitions like Pedro Gonçalves. He's also a great creator and facilitator, as we saw against the game of Man City, where he put Maxi Araujo through on goal after sending Kovacic away and then putting Maxi Araujo through to score. So yeah, for me, I think Pedro Gonçalves is a great fit wherever he plays on the wings to replace Diaby, who went to Saudi Arabia for Aston Villa, or he plays more as a midfield-minded player. I think whatever way, Pedro Gonçalves would fit Aston Villa and Unai Emery like a glove. Bournemouth, Turin, goalkeeper, 25 million to 50 million euros. Now, I wasn't too sure with Bournemouth. I'm looking for their team, and they've been playing very well under Areola, so I will give them credit. But for me, I think Trubin is an upgrade on Kepa Arrizabalaga. Not only is Trubin a great shot stopper, he's also massive at 6'6". So when he comes out, collects those corners from set pieces, he does so with ease. And for me, Trubin is someone who's only 22 years old and is still progressing on the big stage, playing in Champions League games, but of course playing for Ukraine in the Euros. And I know he didn't have that good of a time there, but with everything going on with Ukraine, I think you can maybe let it slide a little bit. But yeah, he's been in high stakes games like the Champions League, and he's kept clean sheets, including a 4-0 victory against Atletico Madrid. And one of Trubin's best assets is his composure under pressure. I don't think he's, that brilliant with his feet, but he is still pretty proficient with it, and he can find out and pick a pass. But I do think at 22 years of age, he's just going to improve in all aspects. I do think it's a bit of a risk to maybe get Trubin in, but I think the risk could outweigh the reward. I think, maybe 35 million for Benfica would entice Trubin to go. Maybe he'd go up to the upper echelons of 40 million to get Trubin in. But I think, 22 years old for a goalkeeper who's decent with his feet, there's potential for growth there. And if Bournemouth do put that money on Trubin, he can double it and he can go somewhere else. I think it's a good investment, and someone who, one, like I said, is an international and plays pretty much every game for Ukraine, but also someone who's just going to progress with time. And a system like Areola's, I think it'll be very good and beneficial to Trubin as well. Brentford, Vinicius Lopez, striker, 5 million to 20 million. So this one is a bit of left field. I've not picked someone from Benfica, Porto, Sporting Braga. I've gone for someone from Santa Clara, who are currently killing it in the league. As of recording, they are 4th in the league, and Vinicius Lopez is a big factor of why that's happening. In 13 games in Liga Portugal, he has scored 6 goals, and he is one of the reasons that Santa Clara is flying at the moment, even scoring against Sporting in that 1-0 win they had earlier in the season. Nicknamed as the Brazilian Tank just because of his build and his attempts at goal, where he's able to push off players with his strength, but also so quick on the ball as well. The Brazilian Tank is a great nickname and is one that is true to Vinicius. Not to be confused with Vinicius that used to play at Spurs either. Two completely different players. I think as well, Tony is someone that Brentford obviously is a very good player. I'm not comparing Tony and Vinicius in any way, but I think with Wissa and you've got Mbuemo, very good guys that were sort of under the radar buys for Brentford. I think Vinicius does fit that build as well, and someone that could come in and give a presence to that strike force that Brentford have. In the last game against Newcastle, I know they won 4-2, but they had Thiago up front. He's not scored a single goal in the Premier League. So I think this is a very low-risk deal for Brentford, and Santa Clara wouldn't take more than, I think, 10 million for him. And at 25, Vinicius Lopez is still growing as a player as well. So I do think under the right mould, under Thomas Frank, he would get even better than he already is. Again, I think this is a low-risk deal and one that fits with Brentford's transfer philosophy over the last few years, and sort of getting under the radar signings. And I think Vinicius Lopez would be a good fit for them as well. Brighton, Hidemasa Morita, midfielder, 15 million to 30 million. Now, Morita is one of my favourite sporting midfielders that I've seen in the last 5 years. Of course, I really like Hjulmand as well, and you can put Bruno Fernandes up there too, Ugarte, Jarpolinia. But for me, Morita is just so consistent and just so under the radar. He doesn't do anything fancy. He's not going to take long shots from 30 yards to score. He's not a skiller. He's not going to do step overs and roulettes and all this thing. He keeps it very simple. Progressive passing, pass to the sides, and being carrying with the ball as well. Morita is a very good player. And again, I think he doesn't get as much plaudits as guys like Ugarte and Hjulmand do. But guess who their midfield partner was? Hidemasa Morita. And I think as well for Brighton, Morita wouldn't be a very expensive signing. He wouldn't break the bank. He is 29 years old and is turning 30 in May, so maybe it will even be less than 20 million, maybe 50 million on the lower end of this scale. But I do think Morita does remind me sort of a Pascal Gross. He can play in multiple midfield positions as a holding deep in midfielder, but also could push up the pitch as well. One of Morita's best things is his tactical awareness, his football IQ. It didn't show really against Manchester City, but I promise you that was sort of just a one-off moment for Morita. He doesn't make mistakes like that, and like pretty much ever. I think his passing range and his work rate specifically is one of the best things about Morita. Ruben Amorim actually came out in the media and said that everyone should train a Japanese player at least once. They work very hard and they're always apologising for the mistakes. And of course that was directed from Hidemasa Morita. Morita is also very good under pressure with ball retention. He's a great passer of the ball, and I think he actually fits Brighton's midfield at the moment. And one thing about Morita, he's going to work tirelessly, he's going to work hard, and I think he could even be in sort of a captain leadership level for Brighton as well. I really do love Hidemasa Morita, and don't get me wrong, I know I've put a lot of sporting players on this list. I don't want any of them to go, but I think at the age Morita is, a Japanese international as well, a consistent Japanese international as well, he might want to move career or move league before all is said and done, and maybe that is to the Premier League, maybe that is somewhere else. But I do love Hidemasa Morita. He's one of the most underrated players that Sporting have. You know, the plaudits always go to Hjulmand, Gyökeres, Pedro Gonçalves, Diamonde, those guys. But I think when you look at the team, Hidemasa Morita is one of the most underrated players that Sporting have had in the last 5 years. And again, not just for Brighton, I think Morita would go into a lot of these teams, maybe not the upper echelons like the Man Cities, the Liverpools, but I do think even for them as a bench rotation option, he'd be very good. But I can see him going to any one of these teams and performing well. Chelsea, Samu, 75 million to 100 million euros. Now again, I was stuck on this one. I was going to go for Diogo Costa as a replacement for Sanchez, but I ended up going with Samu just because of the concrete links in the past. If you weren't aware, Samu was very close to signing for Chelsea with Conor Gallagher going the other way, but something happened with the paperwork and Samu didn't end up actually going to Chelsea, and he ended up going to Porto, where he's thrived ever since. And don't get me wrong, Nicholas Jackson has been good for Chelsea this year, and so has Nkunku, but I think Samu would be a very good addition to that Chelsea side. For Porto, in 18 games, he scored 15 goals. He's been on 5 for them, and in the Europa League, he has scored 5 in 6 appearances too. Samu is quite similar to Victor Gyökeres in terms of strength and progressive play. I do think Victor Gyökeres is ahead of him at the moment, but Samu is only 20 years of age, which is crazy. He's already been called up to the Spanish national team this season just because he's playing so well, and he has no problem bullying defenders and also beating them for pace as well. But again, his work ethic is very good. He presses opponents. He's not going to just sit there and wait for the ball to come to him. He will do the movement for the attackers, which is very good in modern day football, which you see with a lot of teams, and I think would also bode well under Enzo Maresca too. He's comfortable with either foot as well, and he's also comfortable scoring with his head, so I don't think that's going to be an issue, and I think that would work well for Chelsea's wingers delivering balls into the box. And yeah, I know this is going to be an expensive one. He has got 100 million release clause at Porto at the moment, but I think Samu's only progressing, and it's only going to keep progressing as time goes on. It's not a case of who's going to buy Samu, it's when someone's going to buy Samu. Is it going to be in January? Is it going to be in the summer? I don't know, but I think it'd be a good addition to the majority of these teams as well. When you look at the concrete links in the past in terms of clubs being able to spend money, I think Samu would be a very good addition to this Chelsea team. Crystal Palace, Marcus Edwards, winger, 20 million to 40 million euros. So Marcus Edwards has a bit of a strange case at the moment. Everyone knows of him. Everyone knows his creativity, his flair, and his also big game moments. For example, scoring against Tottenham at White Hart Lane. But this season and the season before, it's not really gone to plan for Marcus Edwards. He was benched by Francisco Trincao and has spent most of the time coming off the bench and rarely starting. But everyone knows Edwards' ability. His creative flair and his dribbling ability is second to none. He was called a mini Messi by Mauricio Pochettino, and when he plays very well, you can see the resemblance. That run he went on against Tottenham at the Alvalade in the first leg was phenomenal, and only the finishing was, the thing missing, but still it was a great run from a great player. And one of his former managers at Vitória Guimarães actually said that Marcus Edwards plays best when he's motivated. So it might just be a case of right now at Sporting, he is just not motivated. I think a move to Crystal Palace could motivate Edwards and get him back on track to where he's supposed to be. He's always dreamt of playing in the Premier League as well, and he's also fits the homegrown quota, so it works out for both the team and the player as well. He is predominantly a right winger, can play on the left and even play through the middle if you're needing a goal, or even if you want to start him up there, I guess he can do that as well. But I would suggest put him more on the left and right hand side of the pitch. And he's a goal threat anytime he's on the ball. He's similar to Pedro Gonçalves in a way that he can just shoot from outside the box and just score, although that hasn't happened recently just because of, bad form and Francisco Trincao taking over the starting spot. He is so creative and he can create his own chances when necessary. And he's also been great at providing assists for Victor Gyökeres. And I do think as well, since Elise's departure in the summer to Bayern Munich, they have missed a creative winger like Marcus Edwards. And I think Marcus Edwards would come in and do very well. I'm not saying he's going to replace Elise like for like, but I think given the chance, given the opportunity under Oliver Glasner, I think he's going to do very well. Everton, Jean Mario, right back, 10 million, 25 million euros. So for me, I'm looking at Everton's team and I think there's a glaring weakness. They do play Arsenal today, so maybe that changes. Maybe they, win or draw and I look stupid. But for me, their weakness is that right back spot. They've got Ashley Young playing there. He's 38 years of age. And I think there's definitely an upgrade needed on that because the second best after that is Seamus Coleman, another sort of older player. I know he's an Everton legend, but I think they should look at going younger and getting someone a bit cheaper as well to fill that void. And Jean Mario, I think, is the perfect replacement for that as well. You could also look at Alexandra Barr as well, and maybe guys like Jenny and Giovanni Kenda. But for me, they're more experienced in a 5-back, especially Kenda and Jenny. And I think Alexandra Barr is a bit too much about Everton's price range. I don't know what's been going on with the takeover news, but I've gone for a sort of safe and cheaper option just in case. Even if they do get taken over and they've got a lot of money, a good signing and a cheap signing still wouldn't hurt. So Jean Mario is a modern day fullback. He's progressive. He can cross into the box. He's not just going to sit there and be a right back defensively. And I think at just 24 years of age as well, he has got time to grow. He was called up to the Portuguese national team, so he impressed Roberto Martinez. And I do think looking at Everton's team, you could make a case for maybe a striker as well, but they just spent so much money on Beto. I don't think a striker would be in at this point. And for me, I'm looking at the rest of the strikers in Liga Portugal and the ones that I've not included in this list already. I don't think Everton, one, could afford them, and I don't think, the upper echelon ones. And I also think there's not really a mid-table striker that from Liga Portugal that could come in and make an instant impact at Everton anyway. So yeah, I've gone for the right-back role. I think his profile is so low, not too low though, but that he's not going to break the bank. You could maybe get him in with a loan with an option to buy. And I think at this point for Everton, it's a smarter investment. You're getting someone who's young and they can also progress with time. He's not going to cost too much money. And I think Jean Mario does have a good ceiling. I don't think he's going to be one of the best right backs in the world, but I do think given time and opportunity, he could be a very good fit into an Everton team. Fulham, Florentino, midfielder, 20 million to 50 million euros. So for me, I see this more as a direct placement for João Palhinha, who left for Bayern Munich in the summer. And I think getting someone like Florentino in would be a like-for-like replacement and a great move for Marco Silva as well. Marco Silva has, of course, done very well at Fulham, and they're flying at the moment. But I do think another midfielder and a marquee signing like Florentino would be a good move. Now, I do think this will probably be more on the higher end of the transfer deal, maybe like a 40, 50 million euros. But I think if Fulham are serious and want to try and compete for the European places, bringing in someone like Florentino is a good idea. Florentino is great at breaking up play with his defensive prowess and his tackles, but he's also very good at ball retention and distribution as well, something that flies under the radar at Benfica. And even last year, he wasn't starting that many games. He wasn't preferred by Roger Smith, preferring for guys like Jean Mario, who's now at Besiktas instead. I think at 25 years old as well, Florentino is just hitting the prime of his career, and I do think he is very good. I think he's flown under the radar, especially recently when he first came into the Benfica team. The hype was up here. It's sort of gone a bit down from there, which also means that Fulham could make a smart move. And I also think Benfica would be willing to sell someone like Florentino to try and keep their star players there at the moment, which they have proven by selling guys like David Neres before, selling guys like Jean Mario as well to try and keep the upper echelon talent. They sold Marcos Leonardo to try and keep guys like Antonio Silva, Thomas Araujo, and guys like that, trying to keep their young players together. So I do think Florentino could be someone that could be on the move, and I think Fulham would be smart to try and put in a bid for them. Again, it could be something like a loan with an obligation to buy or an option to buy, something similar that Tottenham did with Jetson Fernandez a few years ago. But I think Florentino's ceiling is a bit higher than Jetson's. But for me, I think Marco Silva would be smart in getting this move in and sort of almost like replacement. Trust me, I love Palhinha, but Florentino is also a very good player as well. I think he'd fit this Fulham team very well. Ipswich, Fujimoto, midfielder, 5 million to 15 million. So another sort of left field shout, I've gone with Gil Vicente Fujimoto, and he's someone who's been so consistent for Gil Vicente over the last few years, but he's having his best season at the moment. This season, the midfielder in 14 appearances has scored 5 goals and got 3 assists, and I think he'd fit Ipswich's system very well. and he's also very cheap. Transfer market has it valued at 800,000, so he might not even cost 5 million, but I think it'd be a very smart deal for Ipswich to do. Fujimoto is Mr. Consistent, playing over 150 times for Gil Vicente and of course scoring 15 goals and getting 21 assists as well. He was linked to Ruben Amorim Sporting a few years ago, but the move didn't end up materialising, so he definitely is due a move to a big club at this point as well. He's only 25 years of age and he's not been called up to the national team as of yet, but I do think that will come rather soonish, especially the way he keeps playing. One of Fujimoto's best seasons is when he had a striker in front of him like Fran Navarro. And I do think Liam Delap can be that sort of Fran Navarro for him. He's a very physical striker, very pacey as well. And Fujimoto could help Liam Delap in scoring a few more goals and being a creative outlet for an Ipswich team. He can play as an attacking midfielder, but can also play on the wings as necessary as well, and can drop deeper when needed, but I'd say mostly keep him as a winger or an attacking midfielder type role. And again, I think it fits Ipswich transfer policy. It's not going to cost more genuinely than I think maybe 10 million, even less. So I do think it fits the philosophy. He's someone that could come in and make an impact as well. And I do think Fujimoto is due a big move. Maybe it's not to a Premier League team, but I think there are definitely worse options than Fujimoto. Leicester, Ricardo Velho, goalkeeper, 5 million to 15 million. Fun fact, his name actually translates in English to Old Richard. Not a part of why they should sign him, but, funny, I suppose. Kevin Fernandez, who I mentioned earlier, wrote an article for Breaking the Lines and he said, quote, known for quick instincts and reflexes, delaying the inevitable and attempting the impossible, old-fashioned, secure, quality shot stopping. His efforts merited being named the best goalkeeper in Portugal when Diogo Costa exists. And that's crazy. Diogo Costa is also known as one of the best goalkeepers, potentially in the world, especially in terms of potential. But we saw what he did at the Euros for Portugal as well was very good. For Ricardo Velho to get his call up for Portugal as well, although he's not made a debut yet, he is still on the upper echelons of being a great goalkeeper. And I'm still so surprised he was at Florence, because he was supposed to go to Benfica or Watford in the summer, but both moves didn't materialise and he ended up signing a contract extension with Florence to stay with them. But I look at Leicester's team and I see the goalkeepers Danny Ward and Hermansen, and they've conceded, as of recording, 30 goals in the Premier League as of the 13th of December. They currently do play Newcastle tomorrow, so maybe that it increases, maybe it stays the same, I don't know. But I think for someone like Ricardo Velho, they would not want a high fee. I don't think it'd go over 10 million or something. And I think right now, of course, there might be better goalkeepers you can get throughout the league, but someone like Ricardo Velho coming in and being a formidable goalkeeper, like I said, and like Kevin said, he's a very old school goalkeeper. He's not that great with his feet, but in terms of just a shot-stopping goalkeeper, I think that's what Leicester need to stop conceding goals. And I think Velho fits that mould 100%. And at only 26 years old, it might seem a bit old, but for a goalkeeper, they can go on for 10 years after that. So I do think it would be a smart move for Leicester and Ruud van Nistelrooy getting someone in like Ricardo Velho. But of course, there are other goalkeepers in the world who would probably be more interesting to bring to Leicester, and probably guys of a higher echelon and sort of reputation. But for me, I do think Ricardo Velho is a smart choice and a cheap one at that. Liverpool, Ousmane Diomande, defender, 60 million to 100 million euros. Now, everyone knows about Ousmane Diomande. He's been linked to every club under the sun. But let me give some reasoning why I think Liverpool would probably be the smartest move for him right now. Virgil van Dijk is arguably still one of the best defenders in the world. But the problem is with Liverpool, they don't really have a great defensive partner for him. I do like Joe Gomez and I do like Jarrell Kwanzaa, but I don't think they're both at the level that Liverpool need to try and win a title and even compete in Europe. At 21 years old, Diomande would fit that mould. Not only is he a great centre-back already, but his ceiling is just so high. He does make some mistakes sometimes, but at the age, you just think, he's going to improve over time. And every season, he has improved, not just under Ruben Amorim, but just as centre-back in general. He was a part of the Ivory Coast team and won the AFCON last year. And of course, he won the league with Sporting last year as well. He's 6'3", he's got a lot of strength, but that isn't even the best thing about Diomande. For me, Diomande's long balls, his progressive passes are the best thing about him. Because it's something you don't really expect a centre-back to do, especially at his age. But he has pinpoint accuracy on his passes. He is so good at finding someone like Gyökeres or Pedro Gonçalves or Trincao on the wings, or even swapping the play to the left back, where if it's Nuno Santos or Jenny Katamo. He is just so good and comfortable on the ball for a centre-back, and it is really what you expect from a modern-day centre-back. At 21 years of age, he's only going to improve. And of course, this would be a bit of a risky deal considering the price, but I think if Arne Slot is going to try and take Liverpool to a Premier League title, I do think they need a good partner for Virgil van Dijk, and I think Diomande fits that mould 100%. I also think it's great for Diamande if he has someone like Virgil van Dijk who can mentor him. He did sort of have that last year with Sebastian Coates, but with Sebastian Coates and Luis Neto both leaving and retiring respectively, there hasn't been a leader in Sporting's dressing room or on their pitch as a centre-back role. So Ignacio has had to take that up, so has Diamande at points. But I think having someone like Virgil van Dijk, one of the best centre-backs of all time, giving you advice and telling you what to do in games, that would help Diamande's game times 1,000, man. Diamande is so good, and I think partnership with Van Dijk, being mentored by Van Dijk, and also in a slot system, I think would do him tenfold. And also do Liverpool great stuff as well. Manchester City, Morten Hjulmand, midfielder, 50 million to 80 million euros. Now, I know what you're thinking. I've put a lot of Sporting players on this list, but, Sporting did win the league last year, and, they have been, up until João Pereira took over, one of the best teams statistically in Europe. They were second in the league, in the the Champions League group phase. So there is going to be a lot more Sporting players. There's still a few more to come as well. But I promise you, I do have Sporting Braga players, Benfica players, and Porto players to come. But anyway, back to the point at hand. Morten Hjulmand, he is just so good. And I know, everyone sort of knows that by now. But for someone like Morten Hjulmand to be a captain at Lecce, where he doesn't speak the language, he of course is from Denmark, he speaks English, didn't speak Italian, and then to move to Sporting, and in one season become the Sporting captain, again, in a country where he doesn't speak the language, just shows how good Morten Hjulmand is, not just on the pitch, but in terms of off the pitch, as a leader and a vocal quality in the Sporting team. But in terms of his actual play, ball progression and defensive stability is something that Man City need at the moment, especially with their current losing streak. So I do think bringing in someone like Hjulmand while Rodri is out injured for the rest of the year would be a good replacement. And I also think would work quite well alongside Rodri as well. I think he comes into this team and probably replaces someone like Kovacic or Mateus Nunes to get that starting spot. And like I said, not only is he just very good in game with his composure, his passing range, and also just fitting Guardiola's system in general, I think that he's just a leader. And I think when I look at that Man City team at the moment, they do have leaders there, but it's not showing at the moment with their sort of losing streak and not being able to win many games. I do think they need a new presence, a new leader in that team. And I think Hjulmand holds everyone to such a high standard as well. It's something that Pep Guardiola would appreciate too. So I think not only for a ball playing sort of reason and in-game type reason, I think off the pitch and in terms of leadership quality, Hjulmand would be a very good deal for Manchester City. It will cost on the upper echelons of the 80 million deal, I think, just because of how important Hjulmand is to this Sporting team, how good he is being, of course, a captain as well, as I mentioned. And also it proves that he's just been playing so well. He's going up to Denmark and scoring against England in the Euros. So I do think Hjulmand's ceiling is very high, and I do think it's only a matter of time before he leaves Sporting, unfortunately. And I think Manchester City would be a very good fit for him as well. Manchester United, Gonzalo Inacio, defender, 45 million to 70 million euros. Now, I know what you're thinking. Amorim said, I'm not going to sign any Sporting players in January. But he also said he wouldn't leave. But for me, this is probably the most perfect fit out of the 20 teams in the list. Because I look at Manchester United's team, and the issue I see they have the most is at that defensive role. They've got good centre-backs, don't get me wrong. I do like De Ligt, I do like Martinez, I do like Lenny Yoro. But in terms of someone who is a perfect fit for Amorim's philosophy and has been playing under Amorim and knows exactly what he expects, Gonzalo Inacio is the right man for this job. Not only is he a natural left-sided centre-back, his ball-playing ability is just as good, if not better, than Diamande's. He can find anyone out on the pitch, and he's still very young, so he can still progress even better. And having someone like Amorim, he's not leaving his comfort zone. He's going back straight into, of course, a bigger team in Manchester United, but used to playing under Ruben Amorim, playing the exact same system, the exact same way. I don't think there's any downside to this move. Not only is he a great defender, he's also a very good threat from set pieces as well. In 191 games, he scored 18 goals and gotten 12 assists for Sporting as well. So he is needed, if necessary, to score. He scored against Arsenal this year and also 2 years ago in the Europa League as well. Very good from set pieces, which would help Man United too. Gonzalo Inacio's release clause is 60 million, but I do think maybe they could get 45, 50 million for him as well. I think Inacio's been a great servant to the club, and he's someone who, again, at just the young age, is probably looking for a step up in the near future. And I think maybe Ruben Amorim looks at him as a perfect fit for the Manchester United squad. He's a Portuguese international, and he's probably the future starting centre-back for Portugal alongside Antonio Silva as well. So having someone with that international experience and also being guided by Ruben Amorim, but also leaders in that Man United dressing room like Bruno Fernandes, I think there's a very good chance for Gonzalo Inacio to prove himself in this Manchester United team. Newcastle, Antonio Silva, defender, 65 million to 100 million euros. So I look at Newcastle's team and I see the main issue with their centre-backs. I do like Shah and I do like Dan Burn, but they're coming towards the end of their tenure as sort of working at the top level, and Botman is just always injured as well. So I think an upgrade at centre-back is definitely needed. And I think with Newcastle's philosophy, what we have seen getting guys in like Alexander Isak, Bruno Guimaraes and Anthony Gordon, they're all quite young players who have room to grow at Newcastle, and I think all three have done that. So bringing in someone like Antonio Silva, as much as risk as it may be, he is only 21 years old and can grow in that centre-back role under Eddie Howe if he is still there by the time this video goes out. I know he's been a bit under pressure and, maybe that's going to be an issue. Maybe they get someone else in. And I think Antonio Silva represents a long-term solution for Newcastle's backline. If Botman is able to get fit, I do think he'd fit in well with Botman too. But I think Antonio Silva is just one for the future that you can put in this Newcastle team. They can progress over time and become a centre-back for many years to come for Newcastle. Or if the model is bring players in to try and flip them, like I think Isak will easily go for like 100 million. Anthony Gordon, if he were to go anyone else, will probably go for quite a bit as well. Antonio Silva fits that mold. If you're getting in for like 65, 70 million, I think you could easily get, an extra 30 million from a club that is willing to spend that. He's been linked to Real Madrid, Barcelona. He's been linked everywhere. So I do think Antonio Silva is a very good move for Newcastle. Of course, it's going to come with his risks as well. He sometimes does have a lapse of concentration, but I think that's just with age, he's going to improve. And under a system like Eddie Howe, I think he's going to improve. So it will be a risk, but I think it's a risk worth taking at this point. Nottingham Forest, Thomas Andel, midfielder, 10 million to 20 million euros. So the first entry from Vitória Guimarães in this list, and I've gone with Thomas Andel. Of course, Nottingham Forest did buy Jota Silva from Vitória Guimarães as well. And Nuno Espírito Santo being a Portuguese coach as well, who, by the way, are absolutely killing it in the league at the moment. I think this would be a very smart move for Nottingham Forest. He's a central midfielder, but can also operate as a holding midfielder. And I think in terms of breaking up play, but also being a progressive holding midfielder, Handel is that guy. Handel has been a big reason why Vitória Guimarães are actually second in the Conference League, only behind Chelsea. And they've been doing very well in the league over the last few years as well. They're currently sixth, but with the additional competition of the Conference League, you can sort of forgive some slip-ups in the league as well. But Thomas Andel has been so great with Vitória Guimarães in terms of being a midfielder, in terms of being a progressive passer, but I also think just in terms of being a leader in that team as well, I think he has done really good. And I think, again, it's not a case of where he's going to go, it's just when he's going to go. I think teams are going to be looking at Vitória Guimarães to start picking some of the players they've got there as well. Of course, I mentioned Thomas Andel. But I also think you look at guys at Vitória Guimarães' team like Nuno Santos, who's a winger. You've got João Mendes, a left back as well. Bruno Varela is still a reliable goalkeeper. So I think that team will get picked apart eventually. But I think the most smart acquisition in this league for any team is Thomas Andel. He's not going to cost what a Hume will cost, or even what a Morita would maybe cost. Vitória Guimarães do need money. So maybe I would say maybe 15 million is enough to get Thomas Andel. And I think he fits a lot of teams in this list, even ones that I haven't said yet. But I do think Thomas Andel is going to make a move either in the summer or in January. So I think Nottingham Forest would do very well and keep their, the resisting relations with Vitória Guimarães. Not only with that, with the Portuguese league, bringing smart acquisitions, for example, like a Jota Silva, who is also killing it in the same team as Thomas Andel. I think it would be a very good move for Nottingham Forest. Southampton, Andrew, Gil Vicente, goalkeeper, 5 to 15 million euros. Andrew is someone who is similar to, Ricardo Velho at Florence, but at Gil Vicente. Andrew is also younger than Ricardo Velho. That isn't a joke on his name, by the way. But Andrew is a consistent performer for Gil Vicente. And the Brazilian goalkeeper, again, is someone who I think could make a big move to a big club in the near future. In 88 games for Gil Vicente, he's managed to keep 26 clean sheets. And I know that might not seem a lot, but with the defence that Gil Vicente have and the style of football they play, it's actually not that bad. I think Andrew is a very good goalkeeper, 23 years of age as well, and Brazilian. So I do think he's going to progress as time goes on. Look at Southampton's goalkeeper at the moment. Of course, Aaron Ramsdale is injured for the foreseeable future. And I think buying someone like Andrew to even be a backup or to eventually replace Aaron Ramsdale in goal could be a smart move for Southampton. He wouldn't cost any more than 15 million, I don't think. And Andrew has actually been linked to Nottingham Forest, Paris Saint-Germain, and Porto before. So I do think he, again, like I said, is mentioned to make that big move. And I think you can make a case as well for Southampton, maybe getting a defender, a centre-back, maybe like Niakite from Braga. But I think in terms of goalkeepers, their backup goalkeeper isn't that great. Aaron Ramsdale also hadn't been that great for Southampton as well. So I do think getting someone like Andrew, someone who can progress. He's also very good with his feet as well and fit the style of play at Southampton would be a very smart move. But I do think there's a few other plays you can make. I think Thomas Andel would actually be a very good move for Southampton as well. Of course, I've already used him in a Nottingham Forest one. But I do think Southampton, you really could look at any position and say maybe they need an upgrade on that position. The one player who I'm impressed with, and of course is sporting bias, Mateus Fernandes, man. I feel like he's killing it at Southampton. And I think even if Southampton do get relegated, I think he's going to find himself on his feet. So, yeah, but for this one, I've gone with the backup goalkeeper that could become a starting goalkeeper with Andrew. Tottenham Hotspur, Kerem Aktürkoğlu, winger, 50 million to 60 million euros. Now, the story of Aktürkoğlu is a pretty weird one. So he was let go by Galatasaray. I said let go, he was sold by Galatasaray to Benfica to bring in Victor Osimhen. And Aktürkoğlu has been killing it at Benfica. 10 goals in 16 appearances, including goals against Atletico Madrid. I think he's probably been one of the best players in the league, if not the best players in the league at the moment. You of course make the case for Victor Gyökeres as well, but Victor Gyökeres is something that we were almost expecting him to do, scoring goals every other game. Aktürkoğlu came in as sort of unknown entity. I know he's very big in Turkey, but came in as an unknown entity and become not only one of the best wingers in the league, if not the best winger in the league, but has also shown up guys like Angel Di Maria as well. Not to say that Di Maria is having a bad season, but I just think Aktürkoğlu is much better than Di Maria at this point. And I do think Spurs do need attacking players. I was looking at their team and I was looking at maybe at centre-backs, but my head was that if they're all fit, Romero is going to be starting and Mickey van der Ven's going to be starting. So I think in terms of having attacking outlets, I think that makes sense to go for someone like Aktürkoğlu who can play on the left-hand side, who can complement the central players like Son and, Solanke and Richarlison, but can also create his own chances and score his own goals as well. I do think that, Brendan Johnson's been playing pretty well on that side, and I don't know, what the future holds for Timo Werner after Postecoglou called him out in the press conference after the Tottenham game in the Europa League. But I think Aktürkoğlu would be a very smart buy. I think it would cost them up to 60 million, which I believe is his release clause. But I think he's just so versatile, and he's a big game performer, like I said, scoring in the European competitions, but also has done very well throughout his time in the league as well. It's been Mr. Consistent. He's got a cool celebration, which is like a one flick from Harry Potter. I don't know what the resemblance is there, but I'm sure there is one anyway. And also, I think the name Aktürkoğlu is close to Postecoglou. So you can have the Aktürkoğlu and Postecoglou connection. Try saying that 3 times fast. West Ham, Galeno, winger, 30 million to 50 million euros. So this is, again, a difficult one. I look at West Ham's team. They've spent so much money over the last summer getting in players like Todibo for centre-back and also Kilman that I didn't think maybe a centre-back would be a good option. They've also spent money on a right-back in Wan-Bissaka. Emerson's a decent player. They've spent money on Alvarez. They've spent money on Soler, Somerville, Kudus in the last few years. And of course, they still got guys like Lucas Paqueta, Kio Rodriguez, and I mentioned Todibo earlier. So for me, it was a really difficult one to pick. And I was going to look at a striker, of course, what happened to Antonio, also get well soon Antonio. But again, much like the one for Everton, I don't see that there's a striker in the league at the moment that I've not already used and is already out of their price range that I think could improve a West Ham team. So maybe they look somewhere else for a striker. But in terms of a creative winger, I've gone for Galeno. Galeno is a very good winger. He splits opinions of Porto fans sometimes because when he's at his best, he's phenomenal. And when he's not, you really do notice it. But I think it's time for him to move on from Porto. I think Porto could also command quite a decent fee. He was about to go to Saudi Arabia in the summer, but some, murky circumstances stopped the deal from going through. Something to do with the sports director of that Saudi club used to be the sporting director of Benfica, so actually vetoed the move when it was about to happen or something. I can't actually remember. I'll get the article on screen so you can see it yourself. But I think in terms of another big game player, I think Galeno fits that mold. Definitely. Scoring against Arsenal in the Champions League last year, but he's also been on a great run of scoring goals that season as well. It's not gone too well for him this season, but with the change of manager and, the majority of the Porto team playing not very well, I don't think you can just, point it all on Galeno. He's a versatile winger as well. He could play on the left where Somerville is currently operating, but also go on the right or even as an attacking midfielder as well. He's been tested at left back a few times under Victor Bruno at Porto, but I don't think that's going to work. He's just too attacking. Maybe under a system like Amorim, it would work. And I think it did work for Amorim when he was at Braga for, the few times he was there. But he's also had the experience of playing in the Champions League and Europa League. So I do think bringing someone in that to a West Ham team would make them do a lot better as well. And I think would be a good move. I've not been too impressed with Carlos Soler, so maybe that's who you replace him with. But again, they spent so much money in the summer under Lopetegui that I don't know if they're going to, whip out 30 or 50 million, however much it's going to take Galeno. I would say maybe 40 million for Galeno would be enough. But yeah, I think he's probably a good option. There's a few other wingers you can make a case for. Trincao is a good one as well. You've got guys from Benfica, maybe you go for an Artikoglu there, but I think maybe he's, no disrespect to West Ham, I think he would want to move to someone who's in a European competition at the moment, and he could probably move even further than at Tottenham, to be fair. But yeah, I think it would be a smart move for West Ham to bring in Galeno. I think Galeno is time for a change of scenery, and he's a big game player, and I think that's what West Ham have needed. And it remains to be seen if it's going to be Lopetegui still there when Galeno, or if Galeno comes in, or it is a new manager. But I think it would be a good move, and I don't think it would be too... I think it would be a good move, and although it would be a bit costly, I think it would be a risk willing to take at this point in the season where West Ham do need an attacking creative outlet. I do look at the goalkeeper role, and maybe you could make a case for Andrew or Carvalho or Trubin, someone like that. Diego Costa, if they had the money, but I don't know if Diego Costa would go to West Ham because Areola isn't that great anymore, apparently being benched for Fabianski, and Fabianski is, of course, coming to the end of his career. So maybe that is it. Maybe West Ham go for a goalkeeper instead. And last but not least, Wolverhampton Wanderers Eduardo Quaresma, defender, either on loan or a 20 million to 30 million fee. So I don't know what the financial situation is with Wolves at the moment. I know they didn't have a lot of money to spend in the summer, but allegedly they're looking to back Gary O'Neill in the transfer market. I don't know if Gary O'Neill is here by the time this video goes live. If he doesn't fail to beat Ipswich, he might be gone. O'Neill. But I think when you look at Wolves at the moment, they're a team in turmoil. They've had a few bust-ups. Lemina got stripped of the captaincy for being a bit over-aggressive and has gone to Nelson Semedo now. And, keeping the Portuguese connection alive, I've gone for a centre-back and I've gone for Eduardo Quaresma. Eduardo Quaresma is still so young, but he is progressing every single season. And even though we've got guys like Diamonde, De Bast, Gonzalo Inacio, Eduardo Quaresma is actually one of my favourite defenders to watch. Not only is he great defensively, but in terms of an attacking outlet as well, he can create his own chances. He's very good with the ball at his feet. He can progress up the pitch. The assist he got for Gyökeres last year, he's a great facilitator. He also scored a goal against Braga and nearly scored this year against PSV. For a centre-back to be that high up the pitch is crazy. And I do think Wolves could do something with Eduardo Quaresma. I think they definitely need a centre-back, and maybe you can make a case for someone like Niakite from Braga, as I mentioned before. Maybe look at Benfica if they have money, if they have the money to spend, getting someone in from there. But I think, as I said, I don't know what the situation financially for Wolverhampton is like at the moment. I didn't think it was very good. So I think they could probably get away with Eduardo Quaresma on a loan, maybe with an option to buy. Eduardo Quaresma is not the starting centre-back in the Sporting team. The back three usually is Gonzalo Inacio on the left, Diamonde in the middle, and someone like De Bast or St. Just on the right-hand side. So I do think Eduardo Quaresma is probably at the bottom of that pecking order, if not just above St. Just. So I do think maybe they could tempt him with a loan to option to buy. And of course, Wolves have a very good relationship with Sporting anyway, with the amount of deals that have done between the two clubs. So I think it would be a smart move. Quaresma is, of course, a great ball-playing centre-back as well, comfortable with the ball at his feet, and would also help Gary O'Neill's system. He's very composed on the ball. He doesn't get under pressure easily, and when he does, he can always dribble his way out of a situation. Or he's very good in terms of long passing, which I think is one of his most underrated qualities as a centre-back for Eduardo Quaresma. His long passes is fantastic. But I think Eduardo Quaresma is improving every other game, and I think it'd be a great move and a smart move for Wolves to go for him. I do think maybe they look somewhere else to get an experienced centre-back in, because I think that's what they're missing. But in terms of getting a young centre-back to sort of progress in the future as well, and if it is a transfer fee or if it's a loan with an obligation to buy or an option to buy, it's something that they have the flexibility. He's not done very well this season, so we're not going to activate the option to buy. Or he's done well, we can start negotiating, whatever. But I do think Quaresma could be, tempted with a move to Wolves, especially if he isn't continuing to be the starting centre-back. He nearly got killed the other day in the Champions League game versus Club Bruges. Hopefully he's all right. I don't know if he's going to play on Saturday against Boavista. Apparently he's out for 3 weeks, but I don't know if that's true. So he might play, he might not. But yeah, I think Eduardo Quaresma is a fantastic centre-back. He's someone who's still young, who's going to progress. And I think Wolves could do a lot worse. I do think maybe they could do a lot better. I think they should probably go for an experienced centre-back, someone who's used to playing in the Premier League and is used to playing at a high-pressure situation. Maybe someone a bit older and a bit more experienced, I think might be the move. But I also think Eduardo Quaresma could be a good shout as well. So that is the end of the video. Please let me know what you thought of my choices. Even if you're a fan of these clubs and you thought I made such a bad decision, please let me know, because I want to learn as time goes on as well. If you do agree with any of the choices, let me know. Do you think I got any maybe for the wrong club, or what do you think? Just let me know. I love hearing feedback, so I really do appreciate it. If you want to see more style of videos like this, in terms of like a list video or a club video, what I think they can improve, let me know. If you want to see more of the timeline stuff that I've been doing, check out the videos in the link in the description as well. Make sure you subscribe with the notifications on to see the latest uploads. And yeah, that's it from me with Sam Sega. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time, and peace.